Okay, we are down to one mic. I'm going to blame the fact that we're down to one mic on the cold, because I do love it when the tech breaks, and I do love to whine about it when the tech breaks, just so that you realise just how hard my life is, getting to go to conferences and hear amazing research in the midst of beautiful campuses like Oxford's Pembroke College. Pity me, folks, pity me. My rather confused guest is wondering why on earth, what on earth he's signed up to. We're joined now by Brendan Tam, who is at the University of Warwick, looking at political history. And I gather, Brendan, political friendship. So welcome, first of all. Thanks for agreeing to do a Vox Pop for us. My immediate question for listeners, what is political friendship?
Thank you, Zach. And it's great to be here, great to be on your podcast. And I get that question a lot when I explain my PhD project to people. Often I get asked the two-pronged question of firstly, why friendship, in terms of why you're looking at friendship in the political setting, and then, well, what is political friendship? So the thesis of my research and my argument is that in the particular period of British history that I focus on, which is the late Hanoverian period, 1760 to 1837, that there was a particular rhetoric in politics that was used, the language of friendship, which was often invoked to describe political alliances, connections between individuals in politics, and also broader political networks and circles. If you're thinking Napoleonic Wars, a key figure, of course, was Prime Minister William Pitt the Younger. And while some historians have labelled him a Tory, if you look at the correspondence between him and his supporters, and even in newspapers of the time, they may have used terms instead like the Friends of Mr. Pitt. And the same with Charles James Fox, it were terms such as the Friends of Mr. Fox. So I'm interested in, firstly, why was the term friend used instead of perhaps other political terms for political affiliation? And also, when friendship claims were made and the rhetoric was employed, what was being appealed to? What sort of claims were being made in particular contexts? And really, why was this particular language being used in the lead up to a more established system of politics and political parties you start to see with the reign of Victoria going into the 1840s and well into the 19th century?
You've immediately hit on where I was going to take us next so you set this up beautifully. It's like you can read my mind. Because one of the things that I'm often encouraging listeners to do is to step away from that kind of party political mindset, which it's very easy to apply because we look at this period and we can see perhaps some early indicators of, as you're kind of referring to, maybe some folks sort of coming together with alliances. We've also got that long-standing kind of Whig versus Tory mindset, and so it's very tempting to kind of take the modern day kind of left versus right mentality and start to try and apply that to this period. But of course, that's not how it works. So how does politics work during this period in terms of really key things like governments having certain agendas and trying to get those agendas through, and kind of building in this idea of friendship and kind of alliances? Are things kind of less formal, I suppose, is one way of getting into this?
I think there definitely is a degree of informality when it comes to politics in this period. Of course, I think one of the tropes, and actually it's more of a 19th century creation, but you start to have clubland and a lot of, I guess, political deals happening in the back smoky rooms of clubs that you can still find today at Pall Mall and other places in London. But I think in the earlier period that I'm interested in, that late 18th century, there is that to a degree, but also what's important is a lot of informal connections. So, for example, even if you have, for lack of a better term, a Tory and a Whig, often or people on the opposing side of Parliament, I should say, as we can conceive of it, they might have all went to Eton together, or Christchurch, Oxford was a big one that a lot of prime ministers and MPs attended. One of my main case studies surrounds one of my chapters, looks at a Christchurch set, as they describe themselves, which included both George Canning and the third Baron Holland, who was a key Whig nephew of Charles James Fox. So you have these competing figures that may have been private friends, but also not necessarily political allies. So you have this tension point here where there's an informality when it comes to politics that allows these connections, but at the same time, there is an awareness that there are competing sides. You start to have more of a view that you can have formalised opposition against the government, which I think was the point you were mentioning in terms of formation of government, in that very much the 18th century narrative is that it was viewed as there was a large group of MPs in the parliament that would naturally support whoever the king appointed as prime minister. So you have cases such as Lord Bute, like Pitt the Younger himself when he first becomes prime minister in 1783, where he doesn't actually have support of the broad members in the House of Parliament, in the House of Commons, that it's very much imposed on above. And it's one of the last examples of that happening. So this is very much a period where those dynamics of politics are changing and are in flux.
See, I really want to ask a question about patronage. So I'm going to ask a question about patronage. Let's be honest. Where does patronage fit into all of this? I know that's a very simple question, but patronage is very widely recognised as integral to how people kind of make waves within society and find their advancement in many cases. How does that feed into kind of political alliances, political friendships, and all the rest of it?
So patronage does play, as you just alluded to, a key role in this whole picture. So there's examples of, and I think when you collapse some of these networks, if I go back to that Christchurch Oxford example, that someone like George Canning becomes prime minister, or even when you're a senior government minister, you start to have access to particular patronage, particular positions. So people that you might have known all your life, you might have known back from Eton or school before you went to Cambridge or Oxford, they will start writing to you and asking for particular favours, particular positions. So it's a different type of patronage as I think sometimes you might conceive of when you think of patronage, because if you're the sort of historian or sort of person that's interested in going to places like the National Archives and you start reading the papers there that are a lot of Foreign Office material and a lot of Prime Minister material, you see a lot of the formal, I guess, claims to patronage. You can find, if you look at the Pitt papers, for example, you'll find people that he might never have met or he knew very loosely sort of requesting positions and patronage. And there's a particular language that's used. Whereas when it's someone that's has a bit more of an intimate connection with that individual, that minister, that prime minister, I think that's where one of the examples of what I was mentioning, that rhetoric of friendship is used for claim making, that you might reference it, you've been friends with an individual for 30 years and that, all our other friends you've given positions to and the like, and why aren't you helping me out? You owe me this piece of patronage, so why aren't you doing it for me? So there's a few examples like that I've found, which are very fascinating because I think it does really tell you how parts of that system operated, and also that tension that was there in terms of maintaining those personal relationships and also trying to navigate the political seas that you also had to manage when you were a minister. And sometimes you actually didn't have as much access to these patronage offers in particular offices of state that some people thought you did, that you didn't necessarily have that agency to give people what they wanted.
I absolutely love that. That's the first time I've ever heard of patronage for other people being used as a kind of almost blackmail weapon to try and secure your own patronage. You've done this for someone else. Why the heck haven't you done it for me? We could talk for literally half an hour just on that topic, but it is so darn cold. Have I mentioned that it's cold yet?
It's very cold.
It really is, folks. You've got no idea. And I don't have a coat because I'm an idiot. But before we go, Brendan, I do just want you to give folks a chance to find out how they can find out more about your work, social media, where you're publishing, all of those kinds of fun things.
Sure, thank you, Zach. So I'm well into the PhD at this point, so I don't have anything published quite as of yet that I can direct people to, but if you Google my name, Brendan Tam, my Warwick University website page, landing page comes up. On social media, it's generally Brendan Tam or Brendan J Tam, one of those two variants. So that's really the best place to find me and to find links and to my work as it's ongoing.
Brilliant. And as listeners will have sensed, there is no way that we are not sitting down and having a much longer conversation for the show. So, folks, you can look forward to that. But for now, from a very chilly, frankly, sub-zero, I think, Oxford, thank you so much. I hope you've enjoyed BSECS and look forward to seeing you very soon.
Thank you, Zach.
Folks, do me a favour. Go and review the show. Do it right now. 5 stars, please, and a comment, crucially. It takes you seconds, but it sends the algorithm wild and catapults us up the rankings. It's the most powerful thing you can do to support the hours of content that we provide for free. Love the show? Never want to miss the latest news? Sign up to our newsletter. The link is in the description, and get regular Napoleonic bulletins direct to your inbox. Looking for a present for the Napoleonicist in your life? we have a shop packed with Napoleonic Wars Pod merch. Check out the link in the description. And did you know you can now gift people subscriptions to the Patreon perks we offer? So, if you want to treat someone to our online course, exclusive Meet the Author sessions, green room access to recordings, and exclusive episodes, head to patreon.com/napwarspod to find out more. Much love to all our Patreon supporters who are enjoying a rejuvenated and revitalized offering of perks on Patreon. Head to patreon.com/the Napoleonic Wars Pod to find out how you can join a buzzing community of like-minded Napoleonic nerds who are enjoying things like courses, socials, book clubs, green room access to recordings, early releases, exclusive episodes, and much, much more. Their support is empowering us to triple our output and keep you entertained with Napoleonic nerdery on a near daily basis. Prices start from just £2 a month. So if you can spare the cost of a cup of coffee each month to support us, it would mean a huge amount and might even fund some documentary work. Shout outs to our patrons who, at the time of recording in mid-January 2024, were in the mentioned in dispatches tier, Brendan Teeling, Beatrice de Graaf, Lynn Dawson, Jim Deary, Josh Keeney, Colin Fieldhouse, Stephen Colson, Jim Getz, Stephen Gillen, Hugh Brennan, Alistair Campbell-Grieve, Andy Meakin, Mark Anscombe, Rob Coughlin, Bruins Girl, Noah Fink, Miles Reedy, Nick Overland, Graham Goodwin, Chris Pramus, Anthony Gumbau, Anonymous American, James Fluick, Natasha Hobday, Rod Schwager, Chris Kimball, Gary Dennis, Ted Andrews, Richard Anderson, Arthur Forgy, Sam Moore, Wyatt Pollock, Carol Dixon Smith, Roland Shark, Giovanni, Jean-Baptiste Van Merlen, Darla Vincent, Peter Findley, Jeff Maple, Ian Harding, Indiana Fats, Joe Ayres, Robin Brasher, Daniel Friedman, and Jonathan Willets. The Admirals, John Haynes, Mike Guest, Rachel Stark, Mark Duckers, David Priest, David Maxwell, Graham Callister, Sean Sullivan, Stephen Ashworth, Kate Walcombe, Clemens Beman, Charles McKay, Reto the Sci-Fi Fan, Tim Day, Jason Moran, and Tim Pritchard. The Chiefs of Staff, Adam Coslin, the Marshals, Ryan Diamond and JC Kaiser, the Legion of Scholars, Dan Hazelwood and Bob Burnham, and in the Crown Yourself tier, Emperor of the First French Empire Todd Campbell and the Duke of Wellington, Laird Campbell. We'll be back very soon, but until then, this has been the Napoleonic Wars Pod. On behalf of myself, Liam, Luke, Josh, and Zoe, take care of yourselves, folks. Stay well. And as always, thank you for listening.